Product placement. Môžeš to správne otočiť, ak bol product placement.
It is a lemonade, and I'm going to start speaking English now. All right. Welcome to my talk, presentation, show and tell, or whatever you would like to think about this. Introduction to GraphQL. So hello and welcome. What will happen now is that I will try to tell you what is GraphQL, why is it useful, or why I think it's useful, where to use it, and most importantly, I'll try to show you how to use it. What you can expect is to have a very simple but complete example of how GraphQL could work and be built on top of a REST API server and used in a client, for example, React.js app with relay modeling. So this is what I have built. I have repos where you can just take a look at this example and you can check it out or play with it, get inspired by that and build something. It's something I built just for the purpose of this because I do have production code I could probably share, but maybe not, maybe that's not the best way to show how this all works, so here we go. As far as for all of you, you don't have to be a front-end developer to understand what's going on here. You probably won't die of boredom if you're someone else who's not a developer at all, but I think it's useful to have an understanding of at least some sort of language, and you'll be able to get the idea of what's going on and why this might be cool or maybe not. All right, so let's start. What is GraphQL? GraphQL is a query language for your API. So it's something that runs on the server, and it can get queries and reply to your queries. And it's not really tied to any specific database or storage engine, but it's just a bunch of code that's meant to build on top of something. So if you send a query like this is a simple JSON to ask for some name of me, and the response will look like that. As you can see, the query and the response are very similar. Only the response contains the data you're actually asking for, so it's fairly simple for now. Now, where is GraphQL? It's, you can see that this is where the years of university education paid off very well. It lives between your client and your REST API, or maybe even better, between your client and your bunch of other APIs or database or S3 bucket. Can you tell that's a bucket? And so on. So GraphQL is meant to pull all those things together and serve your client, or maybe you could have multiple clients. I forgot to draw a little phone. And nowadays it's very difficult to draw a phone because it's just a rectangle basically. You could have different clients pulling from the same GraphQL server and have that serve data from all kinds of APIs. So this is why it's cool. And just to summarize that, why GraphQL? I think it's a simple and self-descriptive way to query the data. So it should be easy to understand and easy to see what's going on. You only get what you need. So the APIs over there might have so much data, but you can only ask for a couple of fields, and GraphQL should pull those fields and give you the data you're asking for. And it can do that even if those pieces of information live in multiple places. Like you can pull something from one API and something else from another. And that's great. Okay. So how GraphQL? You might be thinking, this sounds great, or we still have beer, so let's go on and tell us how to actually do this. I have a very simple Hello World example because why not? I love to start with a Hello World. You do npm init, you install a GraphQL.js package from npm, and then you create a server file, something like this. Pardon the old JavaScript syntax, but I'll get over that and later on in the presentation. So this is the whole thing that we need for the Hello World example, and I'll go and try to find the piece of code somewhere here. See if you can see this. Okay. So this is my whole project. I'll get rid of this. And we're just importing, well, the old way requirements and pieces of GraphQL package. We build a schema, so this is very important with GraphQL. You need to define your types. So for now, we have only one type, query, and that has one field, which is a string. That field's called hello. And then we try to put this together somehow with the help of the GraphQL JS package. We give it a schema. We give it, this is the actual query we're asking. And then this root is helped resolve the answer for the query. So when we run this, how do I run it? Oh, server. It might be a little bit anticlimactic, but we get a tiny JSON in response. And this is the response from our GraphQL server. It's sort of nice, but not quite there yet, because it's just a hello world example. So we are probably not going to be writing our query in one file and in the same file also replying to that, because it makes no sense. We're going to split it up somehow and take the queries from somewhere else and then maybe get the response from somewhere else. But
sorry, could you make the form a little bit larger because it's hard to stand up in the
sure.
Thanks.
Wait, we'll give it more. I don't need this. So the important part is that when we call this piece of file, we got hello world, and this is just the GraphQL hello world. Like I said, this is nice, but not quite there yet, so let's make it a little more complicated. And let's have Express, so that we can actually build a server that can take queries and then reply to those. I have another repo or example to do that. I'll get rid of this one. It's really useless at this point. I'll go here, open this. Okay, I have to get rid of this. It's a little bigger. Okay, I'll show you this in the code, I guess. There you go. So this is. Wait, I need to do something else. Git checkout. Since I don't exactly want to be doing live coding because I make so many mistakes, I have prepared all of it and created branches. So whenever I'm switching branches, I'm traveling in time and doing my own lazy version of live coding. Okay, so this is the hello world example using the Express. We have the Express here, and we have something that connects the Express and GraphQL together. And this is the same GraphQL package that we had before. We define the same schema, so our GraphQL server at this point is going to be very simple. It can only you can only ask for hello, and you can see that it will still just return hello from a string basically here. But this is the interesting part where we actually can run a server that will listen on the port 4000, and using this GraphQL Express package. We give it schema, we give it the root value, that's what helps resolve, and we can, when we run this, I think I'm running this, yep, I am. We can see something amazing. Was the port 4000? This is really tiny, I must be done. Oh, no, I always make a mistake. I said it's supposed to run on GraphQL endpoint here, so of course I got nothing there. Okay, and what you can see here is a GraphQL. I'm not really sure how that's supposed to be pronounced. Like real quick, GraphQL, maybe. It's the user interface to GraphQL. Here, on the left, on the very left, this is where you're supposed to enter your query. In the middle is the response, and this is some kind of documentation that's always built from the schema that you supply. So you can see that our whole query can only now have a field hello, and that's a string, so it's still fairly simple. But we can already try and get that. Ta-da! And this is already a server. Congratulations, we just built a GraphQL server. Still a bit unusable, but it's very nice. Let me see, let's go back a little bit. So, this is a schema. GraphQL always needs a schema. You can build a schema in several ways. This is just defined as a long string, and you can read it. But then also you have these values here that need to resolve to something, and this is how you create a response. So if we were to add something else here, we would also need to add it to the resolver. And this is the magical part where we say that we want to run this with GraphQL, so with the user interface, which is probably what you want to do when you're building a GraphQL and just playing with it. Maybe you don't want to do that for production, but for now, this is great. He told me to drink more.
Otherwise.
Okay, I think we can go and make this example a little more complex by doing what? Okay, we'll try to connect this very little and cute GraphQL server to an actual REST API to simulate what we would be doing in the real world. For that, I had to create my own little server, which should be still running on port 3000. Hello. I can get users from it. Okay. So let's pretend this is a REST API. It should be very simple because this is a REST API. And I can get the list of users here. Or I can ask for user by ID. Sorry. That video is going to be fun to watch. So here I'm asking just for user. This is what you would normally have. You can imagine this is articles, or this is actual users, or products, or anything else. Is very standard thing you would be doing. I have that. Okay, the endpoints I just described. And this is just to reiterate this, what we have. Okay, now to put a GraphQL on top of it, we have to do a couple of things. We will separate the schema.js file to keep things a little more clear. We'll have to write some fetch helper functions because GraphQL is smart, but it still needs a little help fetching those things. And we'll import some more things from GraphQL, of course, because we'll need to define a little more of a schema. I will go to another branch, which is called checkout. What branch? Magically code appears. This is, I love this. So this file got smaller because I don't want to pollute it too much. I will import the schema from a separate file, which is where most of the logic happens, and this just stays. I still have GraphQL. I still use GraphQL HTTP, which is the Express GraphQL. And now here, the schema, we build the schema differently now. We're going to build it like this and define two types. Okay, I should use the computer slower. Okay, I know, I've been told that. So we define a query type, which is the top thing, and then underneath that you can have different types, like a user type, for example. I am scrolling slowly. And user type will define the user. For now, again, scrolling slowly. User type will have name. Okay, that's what my API has, and ID. It's really very simple. And I used that somewhere here. Sorry. Not in my folder, I think. our query type has two fields now. So similarly to the REST API that we had, you can either ask for all users here, or you can ask for user, where you supply an argument, it's an ID, and you should get the user that you wanted. And now I think we can try it. No, no, there. I want this. No, no. Oh, don't worry about that. Okay, I need to refresh that. Let's see if this, okay. So the GraphQL already showing me the bigger schema that we have now, and I should be able to use that here. If you hit Control space, it gives you this helper thingy, what's it called, autocomplete. And then you can just ask for all users, and you can ask for example, name of all users. And that's it. You can also ask for their ID, and it will show ID. Or you can just ask for our ID, of course, and we'll give just IDs. Okay, so let's go with this. So this is the query that we have. This is the field, and from that we go deeper because this all users is of type list of user types, which makes sense. I'm just speaking slowly. I think it's fine. And it resolves, this is kind of an important thing I should explain, this resolvers here, this is what actually gets the data. So I have a resolver here, and I have a resolver here. Whenever I get asked for all users, so I'm speaking of from the GraphQL server, whenever I ask for all users, I try to resolve the request by fetching users, which is here, and just a bunch of fetch helper functions I wrote. It goes to the local host REST API I have built. And this is really not that interesting. And then if you want to ask for a user, so let's go user here. You also have to supply the argument ID. In GraphQL we do it like that, ID. And now the tricky part, I keep forgetting. So I define this as integer at this point. So I can just put 1 there. And I get the user for the ID 1. And it happens thanks to this fetch user by ID function. So here, resolver in GraphQL is a little bit smart, and you can just give it an unresolved promise, and it will wait for that promise and resolve it and return the data from it. So if you can just wrap a couple of things, or you can see here that it returns a promise. GraphQL can do that for you. So that's really nice. And then I don't know if I should go into detail on the user type. It's fairly simple. You give it a name, you give it a description, which might be used in the documents over there. You have 2 fields. I don't really need this because this name here and this name here is the same. So I can just get rid of that. Here, GraphQL being a little bit smart again. Okay, I'm mixing up linting, but whatever. And it should still work. Still does. So if it's just mapping a field of a name to the same name from the REST API, you don't have to do much. If you want to mumble the data or you want to get something else from somewhere else, you probably have to write that resolver, like so, or like we had before. But in this case, super simple. Almost magic. Okay, I think I covered it. Any questions? If you have any questions, feel free to ask. I might reject them. I might answer them. I might ignore them.
I might have missed that, but where is the data coming from?
It's from the,
So it is like hard-coded at this point?
yeah. At this point, this is just hard-coded. Yeah. This is the helper functions that I have. Fetch all users or fetch user by ID. It looks more complicated than it is, but yeah, here's the server and the port. cover that, I think. Oh, maybe this. So at the bottom of the file, we want to export the schema, the actual GraphQL schema. And this is what server takes and uses it here. Okay. Show that the other query as well. Okay. In my API, in my REST API, I had a friends field too, which is where things get a little more interesting if you're falling asleep already. Here, friends. So the user, in the API, user does have the friends defined as well. This is the ID of a friend they have. Makes sense, I guess. So Jane Doe has 2 friends, 2 users with ID 1 and 5. I don't really know who that is unless I ask for those users. But we can do that in the GraphQL, and we can do it better because this is exactly the type of thing that GraphQL is very good at. So we're going to extend our user type and add friends with the resolver. We need the resolver here because it's a little more complicated. This is the highlight of the things that I'm going to add. And let me add my magic again. Git stash, go away. This hasn't changed, it's fine. Here. So my little friend git checkout added this field, friends, under the user type. It's a list of user types again, because of course, and it resolves like this. So you take the user dot friends from the REST API and you map it over, or you map the function over it, the fetch user by ID that we already have defined somewhere up here. So we also actually fetch the users. And if this is built already, and I can find my server, this should still work, and we should also be able to friends.
May I ask where is the database? Can you show me?
Nowhere. It's serving static stuff.
But can you show me this static file?
Yeah, I can show you. Friends. Okay. No, I'll do ID first. Ta-da! So I'll get to the data. We have Jane Doe, friends 1 and 5, and her IDs too. Jane Doe, okay, we're asking for John Doe here. This is really nice. Okay, so Jane Doe and her friends are ID 1 and 5. But what I can do here, what I cannot do with the rest so easily, is just add a name here, and voila, I know the names of her friends. That's it for today. Go home now. No, I have a little more. So Jane is friends with Bill Gates. Look at that, interesting, huh? Probably friends with Joan as well, maybe her husband. If you ask for the data for this is what you wanted to know? Where is this data coming from?
Just to see this.
Yeah. I will find out that I'm making this all up, but it's just a video playing on the screen. No, I haven't. Yep. See? That's it. I won't show you more spoilers. No, it's just that I was lazy to create a database because why would I? The point of this is not to create a database or build some kind of a complex app.
If it was in the database and I wanted to fetch only one field, would the database need to query the whole user and only there would be done the filtering, or can I create also the query which only contains fetching the, for example, name of the user?
Nice. So this is one of your sneaky questions, right? Friends. Just name. Friends. Name. This works, but it is killing the database right now in this current implementation because I'm fetching the same data over and over and my GraphQL implementation isn't smart enough to realize that it's doing the same request over and over. And this is solved with a data loader, which I could have implemented, but decided not to here. So here in this example, you'll probably just want to query the minimal amount from the API. If the list of users is actually just 3 different users, but you're asking for them 10 times, that's not very efficient. So there's data loader for that. But as far as it goes, what API serves and how it does that, you don't really control that from GraphQL. So.
But this API, this library supports such detail fetching and affecting.
So if this
GraphQL Node.js library, if it supports fetching, for example, if I want to just fetch usernames or names of users, if it supports that, it will, for example, I will be able to create a select, which only contains user, which only contains name.
So the question is whether GraphQL can only get like partial data from the API or something like that, or just some fields.
Yeah, if it can like transfer the query to the like low level into this
So
engine.
I think the part that is missing is how do I connect this into a traditional SQL
For
database?
example.
Like, is
Okay.
my translational layer
Okay,
we
that's-
would deal with
that's the
that, and
question.
then
If you want,
how does it
you
work?
can connect GraphQL directly to the SQL,
Okay.
or MongoDB, or reading the files, which is something I'll do in a little while. Basically anything. But if you have an API that has like fixed response, and unless you want to build some special way of making that less fixed, you cannot really do that. So if you want, you can take GraphQL and tie it directly to database, and that's where you can fetch only the data you need. For
But I
example.
want to do it effectively. So if I only fetch names, I want it to create select name from users, nothing more. Not select star from users.
Yeah, if you're talking directly to database, you can, but I'm talking to the REST API, so I'm restricted by that.
Yeah.
If you have more tricky questions, go ahead. Yes. Martin has one more question he can ask tonight. Where was I? He's already asking about the break. I have to look at the slides. Okay, so we got the friends, we did that. And this is sort of a question Martin was asking. We can connect GraphQL to more than one API. That's part of the beauty of it. It is essentially anything asynchronous. So whatever you can wrap in a promise and give it to the GraphQL, GraphQL will wait for that promise to be resolved, and then give you the data once it happens. So you can connect it to MongoDB, you can connect it to traditional DB, you can have different APIs of different formats, and you can get that. Well, what I will do is add another field that will come from somewhere else, so a different data source. I'll call it a message. Now here. So I added the field on user. So the user will have also its own message. And you can pretend that this is something else. This could be talking to, I'm repeating myself, but talking to MongoDB or connected to a different API. In my case, it's just reading some random data from file, random for now. We'll make it a little better later. But the point is to illustrate that in one query, you can get, with the mighty GraphQL, data from multiple places. Message. There. So this comes from the REST API, and this comes from somewhere else. But we don't really want to care about that because we just want all the data that we need. We're asking for all the data that we need. And we want GraphQL to do the hard work of figuring out where it is, or how to fetch it, or do the details. So you can imagine that if you have multiple clients they want the same amount of data or similar amount of data, you can stick a GraphQL there between those clients and the backend that you have, and use only one GraphQL to figure out the logics of fetching from different places. If I do all users, right now, all users will have the same message because it's a simplistic implementation, but that's perfectly fine for me. I'll make this a little bit more complex. If you're excited about messages, you can also, you cannot see it here because I haven't refreshed. So now my user is a little nicer. It has the friends, ID, name, and also the message. So that's cool. I will go here. And I have decided that my data structure is that I have a file for each user. For example, I use their first name to create a file in my data folder, and that's where the message is stored. So this is what GraphQL does. It can also go to local file system, read that message from there, hello there, and resolve it as the message field. Here's a little bit of a function where it's just reading the file wrapped in a promise with the first name, as I mentioned. That's pretty much all. Of course, it would make sense to take these fetch functions and this data getting function into some other file and clean it up, but that's not really what I'm trying to do now, just keeping it together for now. So now, the same request, I am reading the messages from the files. John says hello there. Elon Musk says go electric. Bill doesn't say anything, and Donald says make Trump rich again. And that's it. I believe now you are sure that we can connect GraphQL to more sources, and it can get interesting or excited, or it can bring some sort of value where you don't have to implement this logic in your client and query different places, but use this for that. And still, if you don't want the message there, nothing happens and it just returns what it needs. So the resolver isn't called. Okay. So that was my detour towards practicality, where the previous example was too simple. And the question now is, do you want to go onto the client app, which is, you can see the progress. We don't have to get to all the way to the down, to the end of it, but I would like to get somewhere to 75% of the slides. Do you want to break now, or do you want to break after the client app? Okay, so let's try to build a client app for all this fancy stuff that we did. The client app is going to be about as complicated as the server part, so not very. We're going to add a bunch of lines of code, but it's not going to be terribly complex or super confusing, hopefully. We're going to pretend we have or we need an app that shows a list of users, because that's what they have data for. So basically, yeah, a list of users. At this point, I have only two components, app and user. Admittedly, I should have built a user list as well. It's built in React. So if you're not familiar with React, just ignore this nonsense and pretend it's all fine. If you're familiar with some kind of a JavaScript library on the front end, you might be able to follow. I'll show you what I have here. React client. As you can guess, I'm again starting with a hard-coded version of that. Just a bunch of lines. npm start. Okay, and it should be running. So this is what we're building. This is the hard-coded version of what we're building. We have a page and a list of users. And we enjoy the beer part. That's the message that we also have stored in our super complicated data structure of files in the system. But this is just hard-coded. So we'll try to pull this from GraphQL, not from REST API, because from REST API we cannot get the message, for example, but from GraphQL. What I have in the code, what do I have in the code? App, simple, and user, very simple. Like I mentioned, I forgot to do a user list, so I just map a list of users. Not that important. I will jump. Okay, check out. I will do jump in time, a leap. And here we are already using GraphQL for this. So what we need. Oh, of course. Sorry. There are two client libraries that you can use probably. There's Apollo and Relay. We use Relay, so I'm going to go with Relay because I'm more familiar with that. Apollo is probably as good. I'm strongly suggesting you do research of what fits you better because they are not the same. Then there's this article which you can of course tap with your finger on the screen and it will open. You can find this in the GitHub, in my GitHub, so you'll get to that article, or if you just Google Relay versus Apollo, it will give you that article of comparison between those two. And also, there's Relay Classic, which is like the first version of Relay, and Relay Modern. The modern one is more modern, so I'm using that, even though honestly we don't have that in production yet. So, okay, what we need to do to get our React.js app running on GraphQL data using Relay Modern is a couple of steps. We need to get the schema. So the schema that we built on the GraphQL server side, the schema that defines the types that we have, the client needs to know about that. We can just copy it for now, but it can be automated, or should be automated. That's fine. We install and import React Relay. This is the part that will do some of the magic. We define our Relay environment JS. I'll show you that file, but it's mostly just some values, where the server lives, and so on. And then we define the queries. So the queries, like I typed into the GraphQL. Where's the GraphQL? Here. So queries like this will put this stuff into our JavaScript files on the React side, and we'll use query render or some Relay stuff to make it all work. Magic. Should be fine. Okay, first part. Okay. Here are the imports. Relay, GraphQL, query render. This is the query that we have. You know this one from over there. We wrapped it in a tagged, what is it called? I forgot this one. Sorry. So this is where we define a query, what we want. I have hard-coded that we're getting a user with the ID 3 for now. And we need to use this query render that will swap out a part of the render function. And it does have a renderer here. Like if I get something that's not an error, then I display the user. That's basically most of it. I have mentioned this environment. Which is a big blob of a file that I have copied from somewhere. most important part is here. It says that our GraphQL server lives on this endpoint, 4000/GraphQL. Can you still read that? Make it bigger, smaller. I'll try bigger. So I think this is the most important part of this, the part that you really need to change after you copy paste it from somewhere else. And otherwise, you're mostly good to go. So the query there has the environment, the query, the one that we defined above, and then this render function call, which returns loading until it loads, and then it should return user. Let's see about that. Oh, yes. So my user with ID 3 is, in fact, Donald. And it works. Magic. I'll make it a little more complicated, and doing that, I'll try to explain how. So, fingers crossed. What is not ideal is that I have hard-coded this here, that I have defined a full query here. In a more complex application, you'll have these queries in different places. And I think that's most of it. So we'll try to fix that. I'm also displaying just one user now. I want to display a list of users. So we'll go and fix that. However, whenever you change your queries, so the stuff defined here, you need to run this special command, relay compiler, which takes the schema. I have made an alias for that, npm run relay, and it creates this generated file here. No need to be really reading that. And I guess this step should also be automated and built into the build process so that it runs every time you build it. For now, I'm just going to be trying to remember when I change the queries and then run it. But that's pretty much it for this first example. Array. We are displaying the message as well. If you don't believe me that it really works, make front bridge again. I can go, if I can find my files. Where's the other code editor? Make. Who wants to reach? What's your name? Jan?
Yeah.
Ta-da! So I did change the database, my file. I can omit that.
And then donate button.
Donate button. Oh no, so sorry. Donate. And so it does really pull from GraphQL and not making things up here. Hopefully that's clear. Now I forgot to do the user list, which would be a component that would kind of make sense. So I'll shuffle stuff around and it will look the same. This is what I do often at work. I move code and don't break anything. And if I'm successful at that, I am happy. Let's give it 1, 2, 3. Oh. Too early. Oh no, how did I do that? Okay, I did change something. I already made a list of users. Let's come back to this one. Okay, yeah. Well, I changed the query, of course. I changed the query to all users. And then I also changed this little part here. But this is standard React, so this has nothing to do with GraphQL magic. The GraphQL magic part is this, and that, and the query here, and a tiny bit of imports here as well. So I'm now asking GraphQL for all users. Make your own bridge again, it's fine. And I have a user list component because I decided that I need that, and it was a silly thing not to have built that in the first place. But this is not so great because I'm doing all of the GraphQL query in my app.js, which is the top level file. Imagine you would have this a little more complex app. Then you would probably put all these queries there and then select the ones that you want, or I'm not sure how that would work. So it's not very long term. And we want to move those out of there, and we want to do it the right way. Okay, scared. It's gone. So I have moved the bad stuff out of the app.js, and I just have a user list here. And user list takes care of the logic of pulling the data from GraphQL for itself, because it needs it. But the app doesn't care about that, it just renders. But the user list needs the data, so it pulls that. We're also using a little bit of magic from GraphQL called fragments. What I just said is that we are going to move towards collocated queries, and we're going to use fragments for that. And that means that I can write this. I can write something in more lines that I had at less lines before, but somehow it makes it better. So this is still a query for all users and their ID, name, and message. But this way I have separated this part so that you can imagine it's reusable in case you have two different queries like that. And both of them would repeat the same 3 lines, but you don't want to be repeating yourself. You want to keep it in one place and then just use it or reference it. So this is a fragment that I have created here. I can take this. This is GraphQL magic. This is not React or anything else. And I can put this here. That's highlighting for that. There. It still returns the same stuff in the response, but this is a better way of doing it, believe me. Because now I can do this. In the user list, I only define that I want all users, and I want whatever user component needs to be displayed. And user list doesn't care about user component, because user component cares about itself. And then user component has this defined. I am a user component. I need name and message and maybe the ID. So here's the fragment. And if you open this file, you can see that, okay, this works with the magic of GraphQL. The data is coming from GraphQL. Exactly these 3 fields are coming in. So I can use them. And they get filled. They get populated. We're using this create fragment container, which grabs or takes the user and the query itself, mumbles it together. So you take user, empty, and query, put them together, poof, and you have user with data. That's pretty much my explanation of GraphQL on client side. And similarly, the user list has defined that it needs all users and whatever user component needs, because if it uses that user component here, it doesn't really care what kind of data it wants there. But now this is the top level thing that we have, GraphQL-wise, so we put the query renderer here, and we need to have defined the environment. I did this before in app.js, but we moved it here. We take the environment and then take this render logic here, and that should work. Yeah, this should be. I can fiddle with some of this, and I can not display name, or I can maybe take the name away from here and it'll probably crash somewhere. Not sure what that would be. But this is a fragment, and this is a benefit that we can use with Relay or GraphQL, however you want to think about that. That we can put the queries near the components so they all make sense together. It's sort of like with the styling. You can sometimes do that with React. You can put the styling near in the component, and then you can have the whole thing together, and you can easily see what's going on there. You can also put the query there and it makes for a complete picture, and you don't have to wonder where is the data coming from and how is it coming in, and is it tied to something else or component passing it on. It's not. So fragments. And of course, then if you just had like a user detail somewhere, you would probably do something like this, and then reuse the user fragment. I don't have a user detail. How to use them? We did that. We did that. And we have this. Yep. Sounds good. I have also added a feature for displaying friends. And I'm not sure if that's really that interesting. I'll show you this real quick because there's a little pun hidden in that. It's building. Yes. Okay, so now I have a user and their friends. And the only thing I really wanted to say here is that Donald still thinks that Elon is his friend. But if you look at Elon, he doesn't have Donald in his friends. No, they broke up and Donald doesn't know about that. That's all. But adding friends is just really straightforward, and I just added it here into the user fragment. Because suddenly the user component needs the friends there, it's hidden in it. So, whatever, that's it. And now, back to the GraphQL server. There's one more little thing I want to show you before we go apart. And that's mutations. My friend called this just a fancy post. So if you know HTTP GET and post method, post is for like updating or adding stuff. GraphQL can do that. Maybe it doesn't always do that. Maybe not many people use it for that, but it can also do that. So you can use GraphQL for creating new stuff on server side or posting something back. And that's called mutation. I think I have some theory here about that. Yep. So in a schema, in a GraphQL schema, we had a user type defined and a query type, and that was pretty much it for our schema because it was pretty small. And the query type, that was a special one because that's the top level query that you're going to specify, and everything's going to go down from that. But it's not really the only one that can be there on the top. You can also have mutation. So each query would be either query or a mutation. You would say, I'm just going to be getting stuff, or I'm going to be posting something, or modifying something on the server side. So we want to implement this essentially into the schema on the top level. Every GraphQL server has a query type because how else would you query? Of course, but it may or may not have a mutation. Maybe you don't want that, maybe you don't need it. But it's the entry point of every GraphQL here, these two. So let's go about implementing a mutation. I'll go here, find the right mutation, set mutation. Yes, it is. Okay. Oh, this is the app. I don't care about that now. So this is just us working with the server again. We want to add some more features to the server. Docker go away. What is this? Okay. Let's find it here. So this is all, we had a query here before. We had a user type before as well. But now we also have a mutation type. And we added to the schema here on the top level. So each query, each thing coming into the GraphQL server is going to be either a query or a mutation, should be. And if it's a mutation, then this file of code deals with that. We have a mutation with these fields, so there's a change user message, and that's a field, and that can also be an object. it has two arguments, ID, message. So what this really would do, my logic behind it is, okay, with this you can change the user message, and you can, for example, make Donald say something else in the app later on, or you can make Elon say something else. A really fun example. But basically, this change user message would return the user back, but it would also modify on the way there. You need to supply ID so that we know which user you want to modify, and then a new message. And then there's just this little piece of logic, save user message, that takes the two arguments, ID and message, and actually just rewrites the file. Where is it here? It just writes to the file. It could be sending something into the REST API and modifying it like that. It could be going into the database and changing something there. It's a resolvable like any other. And let's take this condition, for example. This is how we would do it. And now we say that we want to do a mutation and specify a field with the arguments there. Donald cannot do GraphQL. And we also want the same user returned back. Let's see if it works. Yes, it does.
Show me the file.
I will show you the file. Thank you. Nice. I'll show you first like this. And message. Pretty. So it did change here. I still might not have changed in the file. We'll go verify that. Oh, look, I have a. Oops, there's a change. Donald here. Donald cannot do GraphQL. What else do you want Donald to say? Or someone else?
One more beat.
One more really.
And send it to the
There. And our file contains that. And now, to go full circle, ta-da! Question.
In what format will it return error message?
In whatever you can. Depends, up to you.
I specify the query for the OK result.
Yeah.
There is some error.
I didn't really deal with errors, so it might be something like really ugly. If I, for example, just specified something that doesn't exist. Wow. It's whatever is the
But
default.
this is schema error, but
Yeah.
what if there is some like, IO operation error?
Oh, okay. Well, it'll be up to you, I guess. Maybe you can return the old message, or you can return something else.
So I need to define the error schema for it.
Or some kind of a fallback. Well, you are handling the client and the GraphQL server, so it's up to you whether you can just fall
So I
silently.
need to design it.
Yeah. Let's go back to this. I like this one. Okay, do I have anything else here? Response mode, and what can we work here? Okay, if you want, I'll take this. Really small, really small. Shorten this URL. If you open this URL in your browser, where is it? No. Oh wait, look, I don't want to do localhost, I want to do my IP, of course. And you have to be on the Wi-Fi. Who is on the Wi-Fi? The password is If you want, you can do that, but maybe not. Where's my IP?
What is the price first?
I think this is the IP. The prize is that you get to have a break and maybe a little snack. I think this is my IP. Yes, that's it. In the years of me working with GraphQL, I haven't learned to type GraphQL. I always end up with something else. So this is the URL you might want. Shorten this URL. It doesn't want to do that. That's too bad. You would have to type it in. It's 192.168.0.25. And it's running on port 4000 and the input is GraphQL. Good luck with that. But you can really query it, at least. You can do that. I think that's all. Are there any questions or answers?